Hey, I'm gonna give this a try. I was thinking of doing a live stream thing, and got to thinking about it a little bit more, and realized a live stream isn't necessary. Just doing a video to kind of get my thoughts out might be more more of a big thing. Now I'm just on my phone. I have no idea how long this thing's gonna let me record. If it's got like a minute or two limit or something, so I'm just gonna talk until I'm done, or talk until my phone stops. And basically what I've got on my mind today, thinking a lot about politics, but specifically thinking about party politics and local party politics is kind of an interesting thing. But I go back. Uh, I started participating in state party politics about 12 years ago in the 2008 election, and seeing how, at least in Minnesota, how things work with the caucus system, and how we get candidates nominated and support candidates as a party and stuff. And jumped in. Yeah, I was a big Ron Paul supporter back then, and so I jumped in to try to get him Minnesota's support. Uh, but that's neither here nor there. I think my politics have evolved a little bit in the last 12 years. But I want to share some things. I guess some things that I'm learning. I think the last 3 years have been so much more enlightening. I was just interacting online with a guy who I've never met him personally, but we've interacted for many years over Twitter. Somebody I've known online through Twitter because of my involvement in Minnesota GOP politics and stuff. But something that has really been enlightening to me, and I've talked about this a little bit before, but I think it really bears repeating because it helps understand politics, and you don't have to agree with me on political issues or political party politics or whatever to understand what I'm saying, and hopefully it'll help you kind of understand. And what really helped me to understand the political system better, not just here in Minnesota but nationally, is to think about how um, I think about our system is compared to a lot of parliamentary systems. Here in America, we pretty much just have two parties, whereas parliamentary systems, like UK and um, Israel, I think to a large degree, you see a lot of stuff with Israel as their Knesset. They have these votes, and um, they have to you elect candidates, and then once the candidates are elected, or the parties are given seats on their parliament, Knesset, whatever they call it, wherever you are in the world. First they divvy up the seats, and then once the seats are divvied up, then the parties that got elected generally have to form a coalition in order to keep a government going. So whether it's London or Jerusalem or Canberra, or whatever, these systems all over Ottawa, their their systems depend on putting together a coalition. And I think where our system is, people think of it as so much different than that, but it's really not. The big difference between that system and our system is that in our system, we form our coalitions first, before the election, and then it's after once we've got our coalitions formed, then we run elections. So people, and our system is better in that regard, that people know what they're getting going in. Like, they're voting for the coalition that they want, and they know what coalition they're going to get as soon as the election's over. As soon as the elections are certified, people know what they're going to get as far as their coalitions go. But it's really good to understand that, because too often I think people understand that people within whatever party you hold to, and anybody watching this, you're probably leaning more towards the Republican Party or conservatives. You all know that party is it's not a monolith. It's not homogenous. It's full of different kinds of people with different views and different motivations, and different views on or strategies on what to do. First of all, how to get power, how to get elections to win them, and then once those elections have been won, like what to do with that. What do you know what are we going to do once we're in? And you see that there's different. You've got within the GOP, there's all kinds of different factions. You've got the libertarians, you've got the establishment, GOPE, you've got Tea Party types, you've got like Christian Coalition, the religious right, I guess you could call it. And these are all different, and you might actually belong to multiple coalitions. I would say I lean libertarian in a lot of ways, at least economically, maybe not so much socially, but um, I agree with the libertarians on a lot of things, but at least the libertarian wing of the Republican Party, I agree with a lot. But then I'm also a Christian, so I hold to a lot of the religious right and like those kind of views and stuff. But and you start to really think about what these different factions are, and you realize that you agree with some parts of some factions and some parts of others. But really, my point why I bring this up is that the Democrats are the same way. They've got different factions, and there's different groups, and they have to form a coalition in order to get enough votes to get their party power. So, and never lose sight of that. And it's always changing. It's always changing. So every election cycle, you've got, I think, generally as a Republican, I think the Democrats are better at sniping off factions from the Republicans. But both parties, you're not going to win in a dynamic system unless you're constantly stealing factions away from the other side. And that's why we get so ever shifting political sands and stuff, and I especially think that's important to understand for those who are so grounded in their own political stance that you don't want to cozy up to somebody else, and that you probably actually need. You're not going to win in politics without somebody else joining forces with you, and so it's always a calculation, like who can I win over that I can agree with on enough that we can get things done that we agree on. And then there's always the other side too, is like if I bring on one coalition and one faction into the coalition, then you're going to alienate some other faction, and they're going to run away and say, well, we don't want anything to do with you. Now there's always even further calculation in that. Okay, if I lose this faction, do they go to the other side and go cozy up to the Democrats, or do they just stay home? And so really what a lot of the polarization over Trump is that Trump clearly realized this in 2016, and he understood that there were people that he's going to have to steal away from the Democrats if he's going to win. He wasn't going to win just based purely on Republican votes and traditional Republican votes. The last two elections before him were lost to Democrats, and if everything just stayed the same, he was going to lose too. So he had to go find a way to steal away, and he did that mostly through building the wall. Like, well, hey, we're going to fulfill our promises that the Republicans have made for decades on immigration. We're gonna pursue that, and we're gonna actually we're gonna secure our borders, and then we're gonna bring back manufacturing. He brought back a lot of blue collar, moderate votes that had been Democrat for a long time, because he said, hey, we're gonna go for these trade deals. We're gonna take all those countries that stole our manufacturing. We're gonna take it right back, and but that's just kind of it's demonstrating how that you got to look at things as factions. You can't just look at. I think it's too easy for people to say, well, it's just two parties, and you got to go with one or the other. It's not. They don't realize it's more nuanced than that, or they won't admit it. I think everybody really understands that, but they don't want to admit it. And you see a lot, like when I talk about how you pick up a faction, you're going to lose a faction. Well, I think the faction that Trump decided that he was going to take his chances on losing was the establishment, the GOP branch, and it was a calculated risk, and clearly, at least last time around, he won. We'll see how it goes this time. I tend to think that he's gonna win again, but I don't know. Just interacting with this guy that's on Twitter. I unfollowed him a long time ago. I never like blocked him or anything. I just decided that it's probably better for my blood pressure if I don't read his tweets regularly because no, I think he tends to. He might disagree with me if he even knows that I'm talking about him, but I think he tends to side more with that GOPE side, and I never agreed with that side. I never really liked the way they work. They're big on like they're big on talk. I mean, they kind of come across to me as almost like controlled opposition, like they're almost like there's a lot of these people. I think they don't really care if Democrats win. They just don't want Republicans to do what they don't want them to do. It doesn't matter if it happens. They don't care if the Democrats do it, but they don't want Republicans to do certain things, and they'll do anything in their power to keep Republicans out if they're going to do it. And it's not even. It's just so. Inter-party politics I think can be sometimes more dirty than cross-party politics. It's just, and that's the thing that frustrates me the most. You see people who supposedly say that they're on your side, and we're gonna, we might not agree on everything, but we've got enough of a common goal. We're gonna work together and stuff, and it's frustrating. These are the same people. And I ran for Ron Paul, where I was doing the Ron Paul thing. It was like, he was clearly never going to get nominated in 2008 or 12. And but those who supported him really, really supported him hard. And the thing that was just really hard was hearing the people who were more of like your McCain and Romney backers are just like, hey, it doesn't matter, you're here because you support the party, you're part of the coalition, and whether your guy gets elected or gets nominated or not, we need you, and you got to stick around with us. And then 2016 rolls around, and there's a guy that they're just like, nope, anybody but him. And to be fair, I was kind of that way too. I didn't like Trump in 2016. I was a Ted Cruz guy. At first, I was a Rand Paul guy. My Ron Paul turned into Rand Paul. And then as the things moved further on, I started seeing that, well, Ted Cruz seems to have a lot more support. He's a lot higher in the polls, but yet there's enough similarity between the two guys on the issues that I care about. I was a Ted Cruz guy. I was Ted Cruz all the way to the end. I was even like up to the convention hoping that somehow they could get some of those Trump delegates to flip and maybe get or break it up enough that he wouldn't have enough to secure the nomination. Maybe on a second ballot or third ballot, maybe Ted Cruz could get it. I really like Cruz, but and then as things progressed and I started seeing, getting past the election, a big thing I didn't like about Trump, I think Trump's rhetoric and his tweets and whatnot, he's bombastic and stuff, and that was hard for me at first. But it was probably about this time of year, 2017, summer of 2017, I started seeing it. Wow, this guy, he made all these cool sounding promises that I didn't believe when he was running for office, but I didn't think he was going to do it because I thought that's just, that's part of the game. These guys, it doesn't matter who you are, you run for office, it means making a lot of promises, and then when time comes to fulfill them, to live it, then they always got some excuse. There's always, well, I couldn't get it through Congress, or courts pushed back, or there's always something. And even people within our own party, got too much pushback. We couldn't get it through. We couldn't get it done. But I still stand by it. And yeah, you see that in abortion as a big thing. People have been talking for almost 50 years about how we're gonna end abortion, and we're pro-life. We're gonna do what we can and stuff. And even on the little things where we can just cut back a little bit, seems like they're always coming up short. But yeah, it's 2017. I started seeing, wow, this guy made a bunch of promises, and some of them were kind of pie in the sky. This build a wall, like, are you kidding me? You're not going to build 2,000 miles worth of wall. And then, he did enough. He still doesn't have 2,000 miles worth of wall, but seeing him fight for it, see, hey, like he's going to get every mile he can, because that's what the Democrats do. If they can't get what they want, they'll get as much as they can. If they can't get 100%, they can only get 10%. They'll take 10%, because you know what? Next time around, they only got that 90% that they need to fight for, not the whole 100. Then maybe they get 5. Well, now they're on to 85% that they're that they need to get what they want. They just keep chipping away at things. Republicans don't do that, and that's why I came around. And Trump still does things I don't agree with. He's still in a different wing of the coalition than I am. We're on different parts, but he's doing enough of the things that I want, that I think are good for our country, that, hey, you know what? I didn't vote for him in 2016, but unless he starts nuking allies or something, which, ain't going to happen, I'm probably going to vote for him this time around, and I think he's going to win. But yeah, I think my big takeaway, what am I at? 17 minutes. This thing hasn't shut off on me yet. My big thing is, you got to see parties as coalitions. You gotta, because that's what they are. If you're in England, if you're in Great Britain, you're in Canada, you're in Australia, New Zealand, Israel, Germany. I'm not sure how France's system works, but a lot of those places are all more of a parliamentary system. They got 20 or 30 different parties, and you vote for the party you really like, and then you hope that your party, once they get 8%, you just kind of hope that they'll use that 8% to advance your ideals and stuff. And, we're no different. We're really not. The only difference is that our coalitions are formed before the elections. Their coalitions are formed after the elections. And then, since ours are formed before the coalitions, or before the elections, we have a solid term. Their systems, the coalitions can fall apart. If they form them after the elections, and then the coalitions can fall apart. Then they call for special elections, and they say, all right, well, let's go back to the voter. Israel had like 3 elections for prime minister in just a year or two. That and we don't do that. We get our coalitions beforehand, and it's 4 years, and you get 4 years, and unless you start nuking allies and get yourself impeached and removed, never happen. You get your whole term. But factions, that's the key. You really want to understand politics, and you don't want to go take 4 or 6 years of political silence at some ultra liberal university and shell out tens of thousands of dollars. Just understand factions. That'll be a good start. It's not going to get you to be, the next nominee's campaign manager for a national election, but it's going to help you better understand how our system really does work, and see elections in a different light. And it really has helped me a lot, because I've always been a third party guy. I thought I'd get in and try to get Ron Paul nominated twice, and because he seemed to be the closest guy in both elections to what I'd like to see the direction of the country go. I'm not a big Ron Paul guy anymore, and even Rand Paul, I'm not quite the fan I used to be. But anyway, when my guys didn't get in, and same thing in 2016, I just thought, well, okay, I'll vote for third party. I'll vote for the guy that's closest to me. And there's another big thing I'll get to it in just a minute, but another big thing changed my views. That one, coalitions is a big thing, and just seeing that, like, those third parties, they're just like, they tend to be kind of more bitter people that, like, their faction isn't strong enough within the whole coalition to get what they want, so they just go off on their own, and they're never going to get power. You're never going to get elected. It just doesn't happen. You might get a House seat somewhere, even that's rare, extremely rare. But you're certainly not going to get a president in office, if you're a third party. So the other thing that I just mentioned that has really changed my view on politics, and it kind of brought me from, I always was going to vote third party. I pretty much always vote third party. And now I'm to the point where I probably never vote third party again, unless both, well, Democrats are always so bad, I'm never going to vote for them. But if you get a Republican that's just so bad, that I can't vote, then, whatever, maybe I'll write in Mickey Mouse or something, because that's just as effective as a third party vote. And actually, the one thing a third party vote does, and it really does, this is like, it's like nothing. It's really nothing. But one thing it does is it kind of tells the coalition, if you'd have just been a little bit more open to this faction, you'd have picked up some votes. It's just a little signal. It doesn't do anything for the current election, but if people are paying attention, if somebody's paying attention, so they might say, hey, look, if we'd been a little bit more open on this issue and a little bit more willing to bring this side in, that maybe we could have picked up some votes. And then you gotta look at, well, okay, but what votes would I have lost if I brought that in? So it's part of the calculation. But the other thing that has got me to pretty much always be Republican, and not that I want to call myself a Republican, but more likely that I'll always vote Republican, and that's just theologically. I came across what's called the Two Kingdoms doctrine. I did a podcast about it I think about 2 years ago, and with Pat Abendroth down in Omaha. We did a podcast. It was based on somebody else's book, but I talked to Pat about it, and it was a good show. And the way this works is it's an understanding within Reformed Protestantism that we really, in this earth, this life, we live in two kingdoms. We live in a civil kingdom, and then we live in a redemptive kingdom. And so the church is really where that's the redemptive kingdom. That's where it manifests in our lives, is through the church. So the church is all about showing people their sin, showing people their Savior, and showing them the redemption that's available to them, and then encouraging people to spread that and to live it, and to repent of your sin, and to trust your Savior, and the whole, like, the eternal side of it. That's the kingdom we're going to live in forever. But as long as we're here, we also live in the civil kingdom, and the civil kingdom really has one role. The only purpose for the civil kingdom that's God ordained is to restrain evil while we're here. And so, some people go to vote and they say, well, I don't like either candidate. I don't like either of the major candidates, so I'm going to vote for the lesser of two evils. They're like, I don't like them, but I'm going to vote for them. And there were a lot of Republican, Christian Donald Trump voters in 2016, and there will be a lot this time around too that'll vote for him, not because they like him, but because they see him as the lesser evil. And that's okay. I can understand that, but I think a better understanding is not who's going to be less evil, but who's going to do a better job of restraining evil. And that's where I appreciate Trump. I don't believe he's a believer. I think I'm not even going to go there. I don't think he's saved. I don't think he has a strong biblical worldview, but he does restrain evil, and that's his job. And also the thing I like about him and a lot of other Republicans around the country is that they might not be Christian, but they certainly stay out of the way of Christians. And I think that's an important part of that civil kingdom is that it stays out of the way of the redemptive kingdom. It lets the redemptive kingdom do its job. And it might not be part of the redemptive kingdom, but it doesn't see the redemptive kingdom as a threat, and it stays out of their way. And that's certainly between Trump and, we just assume he's going against Biden. I mean, Biden hasn't been replaced yet. He's presumed nominee. Which one of the two guys is going to stay out of the way of the redemptive kingdom and allow the redemptive kingdom to do its job? It ain't going to be Biden. It's not. But Trump has done very little to hinder, almost nothing. In fact, in many ways, he's been helpful in allowing the redemptive kingdom to do its job. And so that's why I feel comfortable that my vote's going to change this time around. Another reason my vote will change is I live in Minnesota, where we haven't voted Republican since Nixon. It's been 48 years since a Republican won Minnesota. And I think that this time's going to change. I mean, it might not. I'm not going to lose sleep or be upset if I'm wrong on this, but I think it could change. It certainly has a better chance if somebody like me comes in and says I'm going to vote to make that change. So I think my vote matters more this time around than it has in the past. Generally speaking, I have voted third party, not just because I didn't like the Republican candidates. I didn't want to be a part of their coalition with the guy that they put up on top. But I also didn't vote Republican because I thought that it was a wasted vote in Minnesota. If you live in Texas, you probably should vote Republican. Keep Texas red. You live in Ohio or Florida, you should probably vote Republican because you're in a swing state, and your vote could decide the direction of the country. But Minnesota, it's always gone blue, and I figured, people talk about the wasted vote, and I always thought, well, it's a wasted vote to vote for the guy I don't like. And my attitude's changing a little bit. You put up another John McCain, and I might sit it out again, or another Mitt Romney, I might sit it out again. I don't know. It's going to depend. It's going to depend on who the Democrat is, really, too, because the way the Democrats are right now, I mean, they're flat out telling you what they're going to do if they get power, and it's scary. I've never been. I've always heard my whole adult life. I've always heard, well, this is the biggest election of our time. Vote wisely. But never before have I felt like this one is not only the biggest of our time, but this one will decide the direction of our country for the next 100 years, 50 years for sure. If Biden gets in, this country's done. They flat out said what they're going to do. Those Democrats are telling you what they're going to do. They're going to make D.C. and Puerto Rico states, maybe other places too, and so they guarantee themselves 2 more senators, Democrat senators, for every one of those new states they make. Even though D.C., it would be unconstitutional for the D.C. to become a state. They want to make it a state, guarantee themselves 2 more senators. They're going to get rid of the filibuster so that even if Republicans have a strong minority, it doesn't matter. They might as well stay home because the Democrats are just going to do whatever the heck they want. They're going to stack the courts. They're going to make sure that the Supreme Court isn't 9 justices anymore. They'll make it 13 or 15 or 17 or whatever it takes to make sure that they get every decision comes down the way they want it. And then they're just going to run roughshod. They're going to dismantle this country like every wet dream they've ever promised. They're going to do it. They're going to take away pretty much every right of the Bill of Rights. They've attacked the only amendment to the Constitution in the Bill of Rights that the left has not come out in favor of repealing is the Third Amendment. They have yet to come out and say that we need to quarter soldiers in our homes. That's the only one that they haven't threatened to eliminate. every other right, every other, the First Amendment, Second Amendment, Fourth Amendment, Fifth, Sixth, Seventh, Eighth, Ninth. They've already destroyed the Ninth and Tenth. They're going to get rid of all of them. Spread right down the line. They're going to do it. It's done. So that's not restraining evil. That's not restraining evil at all. And we look at what they did over the summer, just in the last month and a half, destroying cities, Democrat governors and Democrat mayors that just get out of the way and just let the radical, violent elements within their faction have whatever they want, just go destroy whatever they want. It's sickening. We don't want that. That's what we're going to get with Biden. That's what we're going to get. That's not restraining evil. It's not restraining evil at all. So that's the big thing for me. It's not just who's the lesser evil. Who's going to be the greater restraint on evil? That's the question you need to ask. But I'm over a half hour now, I guess. I thought this thing would shut down on me a while ago. But still going. I'm over a half hour in. And so I think I'm just going to leave it with that. But yeah, so that's my big takeaway, I think, for my Christian brothers. Two kingdoms. It's so helpful. It really is so helpful. I mean, you don't have to like who's running. You don't have to think, because you think Donald Trump's back. Some people think Donald Trump is just like the worst candidate the Republicans have ever put up. You think he's bad. I mean, I don't really think he's bad. I think he's a showman. I think he's bombastic. I think he knows how to troll people. I think he knows how to push buttons to get people riled up. I think he knows how to play the media. He can push their buttons like nobody else that's ever been able to push their buttons. I think even Reagan couldn't push their buttons the way he does. I think he's got a good handle on things, and I think it also helps to understand that the Trump everybody sees is a lot of what especially casual observers see. That's not even a real guy. I mean, he's an actor. He's playing a role, and he's been that way since the early '80s. It's been 40 years. He's just been the Donald, And I think when you start to see that, and you understand how he uses that role, that character that he plays, it kind of opens up a different side of things. So I didn't mean for this to be a big, big rally for Trump because I like him, but I'm not like, I don't know. He's not like my political savior or hero. I think he's doing a good job. I think that's what matters. He's restraining evil. Anyway, what I was trying to say earlier was, not everybody agrees with that. A lot of people don't. A lot of Republicans don't. A lot of Christians don't agree with it. They don't like him, and that's fine. But if you think he's bad, really, really don't like. It says I'm coming up on the maximum file size, so I'm gonna have to cut this short and post it. But just vote. Those two things. You got to understand your factions, because that's how you're going to understand how politics are working on both sides of the aisle, and you got to understand your two kingdoms, and one kingdom only job is to restrain evil, and stay out of the way of the other kingdom. Stay out of our way, okay? Because that redemptive kingdom isn't seeking to overthrow the civil kingdom. It's really not. It'll be gone so fast. It's not worth it. We're just here building up an eternal kingdom. And so we want people that are going to stay out of our way and let us build that kingdom. Let us build that constituency for that kingdom and serve that king, because that's also ultimately the only thing that matters. But I'm going to cut this short before this thing does quit on me if it's not too late. So that's my thoughts, and maybe I'll do more of these. I think this is probably just as good as sitting in front of my studio with my fancy equipment. But that's my thoughts for today. So thanks for sticking it out for 35 minutes.